How much will it take for you to stay away from my mother?
You think this is about money?
The balance was paid this morning, in full, by Miss Cole.
That's impossible. She doesn't have that kind of money.
I remember her necklace, a silver locket with your photo inside.
That was my mother. How do you know that?
The hallway outside room 412 smelled like antiseptic and fear. Rain streaked the tall windows at the far end of the corridor, and somewhere down the hall a monitor beeped in a slow, steady rhythm that no one was paying attention to anymore. Shanice Cole stood frozen as Daniel Kang's hand closed around her wrist. "How much?" he said, his voice low and shaking. "Will it take for you to stay away from my mother?" Nurses turned. A woman in scrubs stopped mid-step. Vivian Cross stood just behind Daniel, arms crossed, watching like she had been waiting for this moment her whole life. Shanice did not pull away. She looked Daniel dead in the eyes. "You really think this is about money?" 3 hours earlier, none of them knew how close Grace Kang had come to dying that morning. None of them knew what Shanice had just done at the billing counter, 60 feet down that very hallway. And none of them, not even Daniel, knew that the answer to his question had already been paid in full. Quick question before we continue. Where are you watching from tonight? Type your city below and hit subscribe, because this story is about to break your heart before it heals it. Daniel's grip loosened, but his eyes did not soften. "My mother's care coordinator called me an hour ago," he said. "Someone has been asking about her accounts. Someone has been in her room every single day this week. And now I find out that someone is you." "I brought her soup," Shanice said quietly, "because the hospital food made her sick to her stomach. That is all I did, Daniel." "That is not all you did." Vivian stepped forward, holding up her phone like a piece of evidence. "Show him the transfer, Shanice." "Or should I?" Every eye in that hallway landed on her. Shanice felt an old familiar heat crawl up her neck, the feeling of being looked at like she was something to be swept out of a room. She had felt it before in a different hospital, a different city 7 years ago. She had promised herself she would never let anyone make her feel that small again, so she said nothing at all. She turned and she walked away, her low heels echoing down the corridor, past the billing office where, only that morning, she had signed her name to something that would take her a year to recover from. Folded inside her bag was a small white receipt. Paid in full, it read. Account holder Grace Kang. She had not told anyone. Not Daniel. Not her best friend Toya. Not even Grace, who was still sleeping off anesthesia 2 floors above them. Shanice had not done it to be thanked. She had done it because at 6 that morning, a tired billing clerk told her that Grace Kang's insurance authorization was under review, and that surgery could not move forward until a deposit was made. A deposit large enough to empty nearly every dollar Shanice had spent 4 years saving. Her fingers found the small silver locket resting at her throat, the one she never took off, and she made a decision that would change the rest of her life. To understand why, you have to go back 2 months, to a small bakery on 9th Street called Ruth's Table. Shanice had opened it 3 years earlier, using her mother's recipes and her mother's name. Ruth Cole had raised her alone in Empire City, working double shifts as a home health aide, and had died of a heart condition that a hospital delayed treating over an unpaid balance. Shanice had watched her own mother's chart pushed to the bottom of a pile because of a number on a screen. She remembered sitting in a hard plastic chair for 6 straight hours, watching doctors walk past her mother's door for patients whose insurance cleared faster, and she remembered the exact moment a nurse finally said the words "too late" out loud. She swore that day that if she ever had the power to stop that from happening to someone else, she would use it no matter what it cost her. Grace Kang had wandered into Ruth's Table one rainy afternoon in a plain coat. No driver, no assistant, just a tired woman craving her late husband's favorite cornbread. She came back every week after that. She never once gave her last name. Shanice never thought to ask for it. It was Grace, in fact, who first brought Daniel to the bakery, sitting him down at a corner table without warning him why. "Just try the cornbread," she told her son. "Then tell me you do not believe in something bigger than yourself." Daniel came back on his own the following week. And the week after that, Grace had her own quiet ritual at Ruth's Table. Every Thursday she requested the same corner seat, the same pot of ginger tea, and asked Shanice the same question. Tell me one true thing that happened to you this week. Not gossip. Not small talk. One true thing. It became the realest 10 minutes of Shanice's week, and neither woman ever mentioned it to Daniel. Their first real conversation happened 3 weeks after that. On a night Shanice stayed late scraping burnt sugar out of a pan, furious at herself for ruining an order. Daniel appeared in the doorway with 2 coffees from the shop across the street, unannounced, unbothered by the flour on her apron or the mess on the counter. I don't know how to boil rice without a machine, he told her. And you don't know how to accept help. I think we're going to get along. She laughed before she meant to. Surprised them both. They talked until midnight about nothing important and everything that mattered, and Daniel walked home in the rain rather than call his driver, replaying the sound of her laugh the whole way. What neither of them knew was that Vivian Cross, whose family's hotel empire had spent a year circling a merger with Kang Hospitality, had seen them together outside that bakery, and had quietly begun building a case against the woman she saw as a threat to a deal worth $400 million. 2 nights before the hospital, Daniel showed up at Ruth's table after closing, his tie loosened, his eyes tired. My father, he said, standing in the doorway, married a woman who told him she loved him for 11 years. She left the day his company nearly collapsed. I was 14. I watched him become a man who could not trust a closed door, or a smiling face, or anyone who stayed too long. I am not her, Shanice said. Everyone says that. Then stop asking people to prove it, and start finding out for yourself. Her voice did not rise, but it did not shake either. I have buried a mother, Daniel. I built this bakery with my own 2 hands, brick by brick, favor by favor. I do not need your money. I need you to actually see me. He did not answer. He looked at her a long moment, then walked back out into the rain, and Shanice locked the door behind him, pressed her palm flat against the cold glass, and let herself cry for exactly 1 minute before she went back to rolling dough for the morning. If you have ever loved someone who could not see the truth standing right in front of them, comment, I felt that below. Subscribe now because what happens next changes everything. Back in the present, an hour after Daniel accused her in that hallway, a hospital administrator named Mrs. Ferreira found him standing outside the ICU, staring at nothing. Mr. Kang, she said carefully, I assumed you already knew. The outstanding balance on your mother's procedure was cleared this morning. In full. By a Miss Shanice Cole. Daniel's whole body went still. That is impossible, he said. She does not have that kind of money. No, Mrs. Ferreira said gently. She did not. She emptied a business savings account to do it. My assistant said she asked us twice not to tell you it was her. Daniel walked to the billing office on legs that did not feel like his own. He asked to see the transaction. There it was, Shanice's name, the exact timestamp, for years of careful saving gone in one single afternoon, spent on a woman he had known for 2 months, for a family that had just accused her of being a thief in front of a hallway full of strangers. Everything he thought he understood had just turned itself inside out. By the next morning, Grace Kang was awake, alert, and asking one question over and over. Where is Shanice? Why is she not here? When Daniel finally told her what happened, what he had said in that hallway, and what Shanice had done before he ever said it, his mother's face changed in a way he had never once seen. Vivian told you Shanice was asking about my accounts, Grace said slowly. But it was Vivian who called the billing office and requested a verification hold on my insurance. I heard 2 nurses talking outside my door. Daniel, I could have died waiting for that hold to clear. For the first time since his father's death, Daniel felt something crack open in his chest that was not grief. It was anger, not at Shanice, but at how easily he had aimed his worst fear at the one person who never once deserved it. That night, going through the coat Shanice had left behind in her rush to escape the hallway, Daniel found her silver locket, its clasp broken, tangled in the lining. He opened it. Inside was a small, worn photograph of a woman in a hospital bed, thin, smiling anyway, her hand raised in a wave for whoever was holding the camera. He understood everything then. This was not a woman chasing his money. This was a woman who had already lost everything once to a system that did not care, and who had quietly decided, without ever asking for credit, that it would not happen again on her watch. He sat with that photograph a long time. Then he picked up the phone and made the first honest call of his life, not to his lawyers, not to his board, but to Shanice at midnight, and simply said, "I am sorry. Please let me come and say it properly." Stay close, because what Grace says next is not a coincidence. It is the truth this whole story has been building toward. Subscribe so you do not miss it. But Vivian was not finished. Within 2 days, a gossip site called the Empire Ledger ran a story with the headline, "Kang Air's secret girlfriend extorted family for cash," twisting the payment into blackmail, hinting that Shanice had pressured a sick, medicated woman into a payout. Worse, Shanice's landlord informed her that the building housing Ruth's table had been purchased overnight by a shell company, and that her lease would not be renewed. In one single week, Shanice had spent her savings, been accused publicly of theft, and was about to lose the bakery that carried her mother's name. She sat alone in the dark kitchen that night, locket still missing, and for the first time in 3 years, she let herself wonder if any of it had been for nothing. She thought about calling Toya, then set the phone face down on the counter. This was not a weight she wanted to hand to anyone else tonight. She had built this bakery alone once before, brick by brick, flour bag by flour bag, and some nights she reminded herself, alone was simply what building looked like. Grace insisted on visiting the bakery herself, against her doctor's orders, wheelchair and all. She held Shanice's hands and told her something Shanice never expected to hear. "7 years ago, I volunteered at a hospital across town," Grace said. "I sat with families in the billing office and tried to help them fight for charity care. There was a woman there once, thin, so tired, still smiling. Her paperwork got lost in a system that did not care whether she lived. Her name was Ruth Cole. I never forgave myself for not fighting harder for her in time." Shanice's hand rose to her throat, to the locket that was not there. "I remember her necklace," Grace whispered. "A little silver locket. She showed me the photograph inside it the last time I ever saw her. A photo of you at your high school graduation." Shanice sat very still, letting the pieces settle into place. Some part of her had always wondered why Grace's face felt familiar, why she had trusted this stranger so quickly, so completely. Now she understood. Grief has a way of recognizing itself across a room. It was not coincidence that had carried Grace into Shanice's bakery 2 months earlier. Some quiet, unfinished thread had been pulling her there all along, long before either woman understood why. If you have made it this far, hit that like button right now and tell me in the comments, should love be proven quietly or loudly? Daniel confronted Vivian himself first, in her own glass office on the 40th floor, dropping a folder of hospital records onto her desk without a word. Vivian did not even try to deny it. She looked at the folder, then at him, and smiled the same smile she wore at every company dinner. "I did what I had to do," she said. "You were about to hand a $400 million merger to a woman who bakes bread for a living." "She saved my mother's life," Daniel said. "You nearly ended it. That bakery girl got lucky." "No," Daniel said, closing the folder. "She got honest. You should try it sometime. You have until Friday's gala to explain yourself to my board, or I will." He left before she could answer. For the first time in years, he did not care what it cost the company to walk away from a deal built on someone else's fear. Kang Hospitality's 40th anniversary gala was the last place Vivian Cross expected to be exposed. Daniel stood at the podium in front of 300 guests, his mother seated beside Shanice in the front row, and read aloud the emails Grace's old hospital contact had finally released, proof that Vivian had ordered the insurance hold, proof of the shell company behind the bakery's sudden sale, proof of the payment behind the tabloid story. "My family," Daniel said, his voice steady, "almost lost the one person who never asked us for anything, because we listened to the one person who wanted everything." He looked directly at Vivian across the ballroom. "The merger is over. So is this." The ballroom went silent except for the soft clink of someone setting a champagne glass down too fast. Under the table, Grace reached over and laced her fingers through Shanice's, a small, steady anchor in a room that suddenly felt like it was spinning. Vivian left through a side door before security ever had to ask her to. Empire City's social pages never printed her name again. It took months, not minutes, for Shanice to fully trust Daniel again, and to his credit, he never once tried to rush her. He did not buy her forgiveness. He showed up instead every single morning, kneading dough beside her before the ovens even opened, learning her mother's recipes with his own 2 hands. He fought quietly and legally to win back her bakery's lease, then insisted on being nothing more than a paying customer once it was hers again. He learned to laminate dough at 5 in the morning, flour dusted across a watch worth more than her old car, and he never once complained. The regulars started calling him the intern. He let them. Every Thursday, over a pot of ginger tea, Grace still asks her the same question she always has. Tell me one true thing that happened to you this week. These days, Shanice always has a good one. On the day Ruth's table reopened with a second location, Grace stood at the door holding 2 silver lockets. One was Shanice's, repaired at last. The other was new, made to match. Inside the second locket sat a photograph of all 3 of them, taken the week before, laughing over a burnt tray of cornbread that nobody had the heart to throw away. Shanice never became rich. She never once needed to. What she gained instead was something money had never been able to buy her. A family who finally saw her exactly as she was, and loved her anyway. If this story moved you tonight, remember this. The people who truly love you do not need proof. But sometimes love proves itself anyway, quietly at a billing counter, when nobody else is watching. Thank you for spending this time with us here on Empire City Romance Stories. If this story touched your heart, hit subscribe so you never miss the next one, tap that like button, and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? And have you ever been misjudged by someone you loved? Turn on notifications so you are always first to know when our next story goes live. We will see you in the next one.